Welcome to the News Hour. More than 100 aid and human rights organizations are warning of an increasingly dire situation in Gaza as they watch Palestinians, including their own colleagues, quote, waste away from mass starvation.
In an open letter, the groups say Israel's restrictions, delays, and fragmentation under its total siege have created chaos, starvation, and death. Experts have warned that Gaza is on the brink of famine for months now. Israeli officials dismissed today's letter, accusing the groups of, quote, echoing Hamas's propaganda. Meantime, local health officials say Israeli strikes killed 21 people overnight and into today, including women and children. Israel says it targets militants and blames civilian deaths on Hamas. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's reversing course on a controversial bill that aimed to limit the powers of two anti-corruption agencies, but not before rare protests against his leadership. From Kyiv to Kharkiv, Ukrainians voiced their opposition to the bill, which Zelensky signed into law yesterday. It gives the prosecutor general new powers over two anti-corruption watchdogs. Today, Zelensky said he would submit a new bill to Parliament to restore independence to the agencies. This week's protests are by far the largest anti-government demonstrations since Russia's invasion more than 3 years ago. There are reports tonight that Attorney General Pam Bondi told President Trump earlier this year that his name appeared in files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. That's according to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. The disclosure reportedly came as part of a broader briefing of the case for the president, and his name was one of many cited in the files. White House Communications Director Stephen Chung today said that any suggestion of wrongdoing by Mr. Trump is, quote, fake news. Separately, the House Oversight Committee issued a subpoena today for Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, to appear for a deposition next month. A subcommittee also voted to subpoena the Justice Department for files on the Epstein investigation. That subpoena still has to be drafted. And a judge in Florida rejected a Trump administration request to unseal transcripts from grand jury investigations into Epstein from the years 2005 to 2007. A similar request for the work of a different grand jury in New York is still pending. The man who murdered 4 University of Idaho students in 2022 has been sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without parole. Brian Kohberger broke into a home and brutally stabbed Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. He had pleaded guilty earlier this month in order to avoid the death penalty. In a Boise court today, friends and family members of the victims described their grief, with some addressing Kohberger directly, including a stepfather of one of the victims.
You're gonna go to hell. I know people believe in other stuff. You're evil. There's no place for you in heaven. You took our children. You are gonna suffer, man.
No official motive has been made clear, and Kohberger declined to speak at his sentencing hearing. The State Department is launching an investigation into Harvard's eligibility to host students and faculty from abroad through what's called the Exchange Visitor Program. In a statement, Secretary of State Marco Rubio didn't give a reason for the probe, but said his agency would review whether Harvard is acting, quote, in a manner that does not undermine the foreign policy objectives or compromise the national security interests of the United States. It's the latest move by the administration to pressure the university, even as the two sides hold talks aimed at ending their months-long dispute. A federal judge in Maryland is blocking the Trump administration from immediately taking Kilmar Abrego Garcia into immigration custody if he's released from jail. That comes as another judge delayed his release from criminal custody in Tennessee for another 30 days. Abrego Garcia's lawyers want him out on bond while he awaits trial for human trafficking charges, but only if ICE does not immediately take him into custody to deport him. His case became a focal point in the debate over President Trump's immigration policies after he was mistakenly deported to El Salvador in March. In Florida, a black man who was dragged from his car and punched by officers says he is still recovering from the February incident.
Can you call your supervisor?
All right, go for it.
22-year-old William McNeil's recording of the encounter shows him asking why he was pulled over before police break his window, punch him, and pull him from the vehicle. At the time, officers said McNeil was pulled over for not having his headlights on, even though it was during the day. The local sheriff says the video lacks context. At a press conference today, McNeil's lawyers said the incident was racially motivated and unlawful. McNeil himself spoke briefly, saying he was afraid to exit his car.
That day, I just really wanted to know, why I was getting pulled over and why I needed to step out the car when I know I didn't do nothing wrong. I was really just scared.
An investigation by the Florida State Attorney's Office determined yesterday that the officers involved did not violate any criminal laws. Turning now to the environment and a landmark opinion from the UN's top court on climate change. The International Court of Justice says countries may be violating international law by not taking steps to protect the planet. The non-binding opinion also said that countries harmed by the effects of climate change could be entitled to reparations. And it opened the door to allowing countries to sue each other, as well as letting activists file lawsuits against their own governments. In The Hague today, the court called climate change an existential threat to everyone.
The right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment results from the interdependence between human rights and the protection of the environment. The human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is therefore inherent in the enjoyment of other human rights.
The case at the ICJ was led by the Pacific island nation of Vanuatu, which has warned for years that it could disappear into the ocean due to rising sea levels, and it was backed by more than 130 countries. On Wall Street today, stocks jumped on news of a framework trade deal between the Trump administration and Japan. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added more than 500 points. The Nasdaq tacked on more than 100 points on the day, and the S&P 500 closed at a new all-time high. Still to come on the NewsHour, the White House announces a new trade deal with Japan that lowers tariffs on cars. Iran says it will continue uranium enrichment despite United States strikes on its nuclear facilities. And Judy Woodruff speaks with an activist about an alternative to calling out people who disagree with each other.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington, and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.